I'm walking without skin. I'm walking without skin. Hi everyone, I am Lois from Walking Without Skin, and today we are going to be talking about healing or unhealing. What is life like after trauma? And today I have a very, very special guest with me, Celeste Louw from Optimystic Bikers Against Abuse. Hi Celeste.
Hi, Lois. It's so great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much for joining us. I believe you've got so much experience and information to share. I'm really looking forward to our discussion.
Yes, I think it's going to be great because we don't always agree, right?
And it's also important to know that I think we can talk for 3 hours, so we may have follow-up sessions after this.
Oh, absolutely. There's always more to say, right, about healing.
Always. So, Celeste, before we start, let's quickly establish what do we mean by trauma?
Okay, so
What is... Mhm.
for me, I think there's an incident, something happens, something, whatever it is. And that incident in itself is a thing. But trauma is what happens after that. That's the fallout, basically. That's the stuff that emotionally, or it's the stuff that happens psychologically, or even in body, right? So the elevated heart rates and all of those kind of things. Those are all things that happen when we are traumatized. So the traumatization is not the actual incident. The incident is traumatizing. How's that? That good?
That's a great definition. I like to call it a wound. It's the wound of the incident or the event that happened. So if we look at the sort of formal definition, it's the emotional response to a deeply distressing or disturbing or terrible event that overwhelms your ability to cope. It causes feelings of helplessness. It diminishes your sense of self and your ability to have a full range of emotions and experiences. So unresolved trauma, it's when you feel stuck from something that happened in the past and you're feeling the pain and the confusion in the now.
Yes, absolutely. I think the thing is that it's stuff that leaves you unable to function on a normal is relative, right? On a normal level. So you have an inability to function, or you react in different ways than what someone might consider normal. So it affects your life. So it could be trauma, could involve you being disengaged from other people. It could involve you being unable to sleep, anxiety, depression. All of those things are trauma responses. So they're an indication that someone has got unresolved trauma.
And the research is telling us that between 60 and 75% of everyone experiences some form of trauma in their lifetime.
Well, here's the interesting point. So here's where we're going to go, right? Because here's the interesting point is there anyone who doesn't need to be healed? Is there actually anyone? Can you actually live without ever needing some form of healing? It's an interesting question. And that's why I have that approach of, I don't really believe that you as a person are healed. I believe that an incident is healed or a certain issue is healed, but you as a person are on a healing journey, on your life's journey. And I don't think that anybody is actually healed.
Well, that's where we differ because I believe that you can heal from trauma.
Yes, I believe you can heal from trauma, but I don't believe that just healing a trauma makes you a healed person, right? Because I believe, like, as we live, things happen. And sometimes our trauma is so big that we only realize that things are that we are traumatized from something, or we need to heal something later on in life. So although at this moment, that incident might be healed, it might actually not be fully healed. So for me, healing is always a journey. There's always more of it, right? Because things happen to us every day and our responses happen all the time. And so from when we're born, things happen. And some good things happen. We don't need to heal from those, right? Bad things happen. We need to heal from those. So I would say, if you asked me, Celeste, are you healed from your childhood abuse? And then I will tell you yes and no. Yes, in the biggest ways imaginable, I am. It doesn't traumatize me every day, right? I don't think about it every day. But sometimes something comes up from that time in a way that I never quite expected, right? So, like, for instance, I'll get triggered and then I'll go, oh, this is why I have money issues. I have this bad relationship with money. It's because of this in my childhood. And then I go back and I heal that. So that issue might be involved with my abuse, but what I dealt with wasn't that issue. So that's what I'm saying. Healing can be very, like, there can be lots of threads of it. And I found in my life, every time that I thought I was healed, something else came up. So I don't ever tell people I'm perfectly healed.
I think that brings us on to the different types of trauma. So the first type is acute trauma, and that is the trauma from a single incident. So in my case, it was when I was attacked and raped. So it could be an accident, an injury, a violent attack. It could even be surgery. It could be the sudden death of a loved one, an unexpected death, or even the breakup of a real strong, significant relationship. So that is acute trauma where you only have to deal with one event. Then you have the chronic trauma, which that is repeated and prolonged trauma. So that is maybe in your case, which was domestic violence or abuse. It could be bullying, it could be childhood neglect, it could be ongoing stress, such as living in a dangerous, crime-ridden, gang-ridden neighborhood, or even battling a life-threatening illness. And then there's the complex trauma, which is exposing you to various multiple traumatic events. So you might have had one rape incident separate to the abuse that you had as a child, for example. So it's stuff that it's a mixture of the two. And then there is a fourth one. It's not usually included in the definitions, but it's secondary trauma or vicarious trauma. And that is where you develop trauma, or you develop the trauma symptoms from the close contact that you have with somebody else. So, for example, you and I, as healers and supporters of trauma victims, is we may pick up some of their symptoms and we might be triggered by other people's symptoms. What do you say to all of that?
Yes, I agree 100%. And I think the thing is, there's a very big difference from healing from an acute trauma, right? One incident. So let's say, for instance, you had a perfect childhood, because we're living in an unrealistic world in this example, right? You had a perfect childhood, nothing ever went wrong. You weren't bullied. You never had any sorts of problems growing up. And then something happened to you, and it's one trauma. And then you go immediately for trauma counseling, and you walk that journey through that incident, then yes, you can heal that incident, right? You can heal from that. And probably you'll feel very much like you did before that incident, although there might be a little bit of fallout. Like if it was a car accident, you might have problems driving and that'll take you a little bit longer, that kind of thing. The problem with trauma upon trauma, right, which is basically the middle two groups that you discussed, is that often there's a trauma, then there's another trauma. The first trauma doesn't get healed. The next trauma comes on top of it. The two kind of integrate with each other. They have fallout. Then another trauma comes, and then you do a whole bunch of stuff to yourself because this has all it's hurt you so much that you are not behaving in a way that is going to keep you safe. So then you hurt yourself, and that doesn't get healed. And then another trauma comes on. So it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then you live this major part of your life with all this trauma. When you get to start healing it, you got to go through all that stuff. And going through all that stuff is not quick. It's going to take time. right? And you've got to deal with this kind of like compounded trauma. And I think because I work mainly with that, right? So I work because I'm an adult survivor of child abuse who's had that kind of trauma. I work mainly with people who are also in that situation. So they will come to you for domestic violence, but when you do a little bit of research, you'll find out that they were actually abused as children. And there's all sorts of things that they have to work through, like their belief systems, understanding the world. Like it has affected every single part of the way that they think, the way that their bodies work, and the way that their emotions work. And so that takes a long time to heal. So do you ever get to heal? Well, okay, so I have had multiple stuff over the years, and I've been journeying towards healing for nearly 25 years, and I wouldn't call myself healed, okay, because I still sometimes have something new coming up. But then given I don't believe in regression therapy and I don't believe in hypnotherapy. So other people do that, and then they might have a different experience. But for me, something might happen today that I would have to heal from. So I think that healing is a progression of life. It's like almost living is going to include healing. It's just going to. And we don't teach people the skills that they need to do that on a daily basis. Because if you get hurt today and you heal it today, then you're not going to have that fallout tomorrow.
Wow, you've said so much in that brief statement. To unpack all of that, I think it's going to take us days. I want to just go back to one thing about healing any trauma, be it but maybe just let's talk about one incident to heal that trauma. What you've said really gave me food for thought. So, for example, with my trauma, I believe I'm fully healed from that one incident. And I have never been triggered. Well, I was triggered a lot at first, but after I healed, I've never been triggered. But I think what we need to understand is I may get healed. The man attacked me from behind. So when people walked behind me, I would get a fright. I'd get triggered if anybody came up behind me. And then you forget I, the smell. Sometimes, so I'm healed of that. I'm healed of somebody walking up behind me and giving me a fright. But sometimes it might be a smell, and you get that smell and you feel you're healed, and then suddenly the smell reminds you. Or you hear a sound, maybe it's the sound of the car starting up, or the sound of the phone ringing, or the sound of shouting, or something that happened at that time. And whilst you've healed some of the trauma, maybe that those one or two little things have not been healed. So that's a very valid point, that you can still get triggered from things that you don't remember having been part of the incident until something reminds you of it.
Yes. So for me, healing as a concept is giving people the tools, right? Like I had to learn the tools and the skills, so that when something comes up, you know how to do it. So, I mean, we can talk about healing as being like processing and integrating and letting go, because Lois used forgiveness and I don't. Okay. So letting go and all of that. And that will heal something. So yes, if you ask me, am I healed of my stepfather's sexual abuse of me? And I would say 98% yes, because I'm leaving that little bit just in case I haven't been triggered on something yet, right? But I'm definitely not 100% healed of what he did to me as a child, because it's only as an adult that I started to realize that what he had done to me as a child had left me with so much that I didn't understand. So as a mother, I was like, I don't really know when is an appropriate time for my child to date. And that would make me be anxious. I didn't have this benchmark of what does a good father look like, or what does a good mother look like, So everything was new for me and difficult. And I didn't actually attach the difficulty that I had as a mother to that until years later, until I was mature enough to understand, well, where's this coming from? So I think there's a lot to be said about holistic healing as well, and not just trying to heal just your mind, right?
There's so much in that as well. So we've got to understand that everybody's journey is unique. No two people, yeah, you and me, or our trauma was based on different incidents, but here we have completely different journeys of healing. And so we should never compare. We can learn from each other, and it's important that we don't go it alone. You need that support, you need that help, you need that guidance, and you just need somebody to hold your hand. But it's important to understand, A, that you're not alone, and B, that your journey is your journey, and it'll take you as long as you need to get to that healing place.
Absolutely. And just because you're still healing doesn't mean you can't live a full life, right? So if you are measuring healing by how full a life am I living, right? Am I enjoying my life? Am I living a fulfilled life? Am I happy? Am I loved? Am I 9 days out of 10 okay? If you're calling that healed, then I'm healed. But there's still that one day.
Now, I say recovery and healing is your ability to successfully live in the present without being overwhelmed by the thoughts and feelings from the past.
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head there right just now, which was don't try to walk alone. Don't try to walk alone. Because when you walk alone, all you have is your own thought processes, your own emotion. You don't have any kind of like guidance, and you don't have any support or anybody just saying that how you're feeling is okay and that there's a way through that. And that, yes, it takes hard work, but yes, you can get there. So I think for me, a healing is definitely not a journey that you walk alone, and that you should walk the journey that makes sense to you. You shouldn't have a journey to healing forced on you by what other people think you should do. You need to really take charge of your own healing. And it sounds like overwhelming when you start saying that, because everybody's just going, well, tell me what to do. Red pill, blue pill, right? What should I do? And the worst thing that you can do is tell someone what to do.
Yeah, and it's also important to understand that a journey is not linear. You think you're healing, you think things are going cool, and then something happens and you tumble all the way back and you trigger it all over again. So yeah, if you understand that and it does take work. You can't just say, okay, I've been to a therapist, or I've tried this modality, or I've tried that therapy. Every person has something different that's going to work for them. Some people might, you said you don't do hypnosis or regression or any of those things, but it works for some people. Some people tapping works, other people conventional talking therapy works, or somatic therapy. So each person, and there are literally hundreds of different types of therapy. So if the first one's not working, doesn't mean you're not going to be healed. It means you just got to find what works for you.
Yes, and I think the thing is that, a lot of the times people will just say to you, just get over it or just pull yourself together. And you've got to understand that that is not a helpful thing. So the helpful thing is to say, well, why don't you try, if what you're doing isn't working, why don't you try something else? So what we do, or I do when I'm working with people, is I give them a little bit of a lot of different modalities so that they can find things that work for them. So some people, it's easier for them to just, I don't know, to just go see a psychologist. And other people, that isn't enough. For some people, cognitive is enough. And for other people, they need a practical way to let go of things. Some people are more academic and some people are more artistic. So I think it's very important what you said, that people must design their own journey.
And also, it depends on how that trauma is manifesting. Sometimes it's anger, depression, hatred, blame, guilt, whatever it is. And whatever that is, it's going to require a different type of therapy, because if you're angry, it's going to be different to if you're depressed. You're going to have to do different things.
Yes. And the thing is that so once you've learned how to deal with anger as an issue once, You might need a few times to have someone guide you through anger, right? But once you've got it and you understand how to unpack anger and what to do about it, then you can work on anger. Then you've got that. Then it's a tool. Okay. Before it was just an idea of like, I can deal with my anger. Then it becomes a tool in your toolbox. And so as you progress, you learn all these tools and skills, and you gain this, you gain knowledge. And then once you've got that knowledge, in order to become wise, you have to actually apply it. So I think that's the thing, is that a lot of the times we're not teaching, you know, this is the steps, but can we apply it together? So that's a journey that you need to do with someone, because that's not something you can do on your own.
Being able to understand what those manifestations are, as well as to understand what the triggers are.
And to first be able to actually hear what people are saying to you, right? So I remember when I was at my traumatized worst, right? I mean, you could have said anything to me, I wouldn't, it just didn't go in, right? It just went shring. So you have to get people to a point where the crisis is managed to the point where they can actually hear you and then take action.
Yeah. Now, it's when you're in control of those emotions and those feelings, that's when you start healing. When you can say, okay, I'm angry now, I'm depressed now, I'm filled with guilt or hatred now, and I know what to do with it. I'm in control of it. I know that by using tapping or meditation or prayer, whatever it is, I can now work through that particular episode.
Yes. So learning how to get yourself to a calm place where you can actually work things through. And then if you're not understanding why you keep coming up with the same answer, actually speaking to someone to try and figure out different answers, because maybe your brain isn't capable of finding another answer. And what you need is more information.
So true. I want to just quickly share my definition of a journey of healing, where you start once you've been disrupted, once that incident or event has happened that has caused you to be traumatized, you become a victim, and you become a victim with all of those emotions of anger, hatred, fear, etc. And that's what we're talking about. That's where we start the healing journey, is to deal with those emotions, find the tools that are going to help you manage and control those emotions. Then you develop your resilience, and that is where you forge, where you reframe and you refocus and you redirect your energy to enable you to become a survivor. And you're still traumatized at this point, because a survivor to me is still a struggle. And then you develop your grit, is where you forge forward with new passion, persistence, and perseverance to find some new meaning as a result of this. And you develop a post-traumatic growth mindset. You may, as you and I have developed, a benefit mindset where we help other people. And then you become a thriver. And then for me, and as you said, it's not quite where you are, but for me, the final step is where you forgive yourself for all the things you've done, and you forgive others, and that is when you find full freedom. So that is how I see the journey. How do you see it?
Okay, so I'm gonna agree with you, right? The only thing I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna say that I don't use the word forgiveness, but I don't use the word forgiveness because of the connotations that it has. So I believe that you do have to let go. You do need to let go of what other people have done to you and what you have done to yourself and all of that stuff, which you will call forgiveness, right? In your terminology. But because I work with a lot of people where forgiveness is almost a swear word to them, right? Because it's always been used in the sense of forgive and forget and just do it, and there's no process to it. I don't use the word forgive. So I agree with the disruption and the resilience and the grit. And I do agree that surviving is not the same as thriving, right? We use survivors for survivors because people understand that language. But I don't consider myself a survivor, right, anymore. Like, I'm past that stage, long time ago. And I know that I've still got things to heal, but I think that the sign of freedom is like, for instance, you were talking earlier about how you get triggered sometimes, like you'll get a smell and then you'll still have to go and heal that, right? I think that truly having healed it and let it go is, you might get triggered, but it won't affect you. So in other words, you'll have the memory, but the memory won't affect you in any way other to say that, well, gee, I went through that, right? And I'm okay. And it doesn't emotionally affect you at all. So for me, that's healing. And in your terminology, yes, I have forgiven my stepfather, myself, my ex-husband, all of these people. In my terminology, I've let go of a lot of stuff. But I find that when I heal with people, because when we do courses, we heal together, right? When I do that, often new stuff comes up.
Wow, we've only just scratched the surface, Celeste. We are coming to the end of today's show. Would you like to talk a little bit about what you do and how people can reach you?
Sure. So I'm the Vice President of Optimystic Bikers Against Abuse, and we work in crisis management and in healing. So if you are in a crisis situation, or if you feel like you are stuck without, being able to heal on a healing journey, that's where we come in. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and almost anywhere, and on our website, which is www.optimystic, spelled with a Y, so optimystic.za.net. And we do a lot of our work online, so it actually doesn't matter where in the world you are. We run healing courses. And then just to put a little flip in the end, I have written a book, and you can speak to me about that. And it's called My Journey, My Way, Rising from the Ashes of Abuse.
That's fantastic, guys, and I highly recommend that you contact Celeste, join their Facebook group. She puts out some really fascinating quotes and snippets and concepts, and it's really well worth following. And for me, walkingwithoutskin.com, that is my website, my Facebook page, my Instagram, my podcast, and my book, Walking Without Skin. And you can contact me through any of those media. The best, I think, is the webpage, walkingwithoutskin.com, and there you can book a 30-minute call with me where we can discuss where you are on your healing journey and what steps you need to take to get yourself going onto that journey that's going to help you find that freedom. So, Celeste, any last words for our listeners?
Don't give up. You can do this. If you need healing, just take somebody's hand and go.
Absolutely wonderful. And my last word for everybody is to forgive and to fly free. And if you can hear those horrible birds in the background, thank you very much, everybody, for watching us today. We will be here same time next week, and I look forward to sharing the next episode of Walking Without Skin. Thank you, and go well.